Ladies and gentlemen, archivist here. You are looking at the headlines. You are watching the screens. You see the breaking news banners flashing red. You see the footage from Caracas. You see the tactical gear. You see the handcuffs on a head of state. The mainstream media tells you this is justice. The pundits tell you this is a victory against narcotics. The economists in New York tell you this is a stabilization effort. They are lying to you. They are lying to themselves. They are looking at a theatrical performance while the theater itself is burning down. If you want to understand the kinetic event that just occurred in Venezuela, you must stop listening to the noise. You must stop looking at the moral arguments. Empires do not have morals. They have interests, they have deficits, they have energy requirements. What happened on January 3rd, 2026 was not a police action. It was a liquidation event. It was the moment the United States government decided that the mask of the free market was too heavy to wear any longer. The protocol requires us to dissect this with forensic detachment. Put away your political ideologies. Put away your feelings about democracy or dictatorship. Those are luxuries for times of peace. We are not in times of peace. We are in the terminal phase of a debt supercycle, and the creditor is at the door. Look at the data points. Look at the specific coordinates. Washington did not send assets to seize a drug lord. They sent assets to seize the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. This is the desperate act of a hegemon that is running out of options. The shale miracle is dead. The strategic petroleum reserve is a hollow shell. The global energy supply is tightening like a noose. When the addict runs out of supply, he does not negotiate. He takes. The markets know this. The algorithm knows this. Why do you think the price of oil didn't just spike? It shifted paradigms. Why do you think gold is trading above $4,600 an ounce? Do you think that is inflation? No, that is fear. That is the sound of sovereign capital fleeing the burning building of the U.S. Treasury market. Let us analyze the butterfly effect. This concept is often misused by the illiterate masses to explain chaos, but in financial intelligence, it is precise. It is mechanical. The butterfly flapped its wings in Caracas, and the hurricane is making landfall in the bond markets of Tokyo and Beijing. Consider the message that was just sent. It was a broadcast on a frequency that only sovereign nations can hear. The message is simple. If you hold dollars, you do not own an asset. You hold a hostage. If you have resources that the empire needs, your sovereignty is a conditional lease subject to termination without notice. The petrodollar system, the arrangement that has kept the American standard of living artificially subsidized for half a century, died on the morning of January 3rd. It did not die of old age. It was executed. The economists will tell you this is an isolated incident. They will tell you Venezuela is a rogue state. They are laughing at you. Do you think Riyadh is laughing? Do you think Beijing is laughing? No. They are calculating. They are looking at their vast holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds, and they are realizing that those bonds are not a store of value. They are a liability. They are a weapon that can be turned against them the moment they refuse to comply with a resource extraction demand. This is the weaponization of the reserve currency. It is the final stage. When you turn your currency into a weapon of war, you force the rest of the world to build a shield. That shield is not another currency. It is not the euro. It is not the yen. Those are satellite currencies. They are tributaries to the dying river. The shield is physical. The shield is metal. This is why we are seeing the great rotation. It is not a rotation from growth to value. It is a rotation from trust to physics. The insiders are moving. They are not waiting for the official announcement. The smart money saw the troops land in Venezuela and they immediately sold paper promises to buy physical reality. Look at the flows into gold. Look at the flows into silver. This is not speculation. Speculation is when you bet on a price rise. This is insurance. This is panic buying by entities that manage the wealth of nations. They are draining the vaults. London is bleeding metal. New York is bleeding metal. Shanghai is drinking it all. The price divergence between the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the COMEX in New York is not an arbitrage opportunity. It is a crime scene. It is evidence that the West is being drained of its last tangible assets before the reset occurs. Let us talk about the bag holders. In every Ponzi scheme, there is a class of investors who are left holding the worthless paper when the music stops. In this cycle, the bag holders are not just retail investors, they are entire nations. They are the allies of the United States. Look at Japan. Look at Europe. They are being forced to hold the debt that the global south is dumping. This is financial conscription. They are being drafted into a war they cannot win to defend a currency that is eating their economies alive. The bond market is becoming a closed loop, a circular firing squad where the central banks buy each other's debt to pretend there is liquidity. But there is no liquidity. There is only leverage and lies. The moment the market realizes that the U.S. military is now the primary enforcement arm of the Treasury Department, the risk premium on U.S. debt goes to infinity. You must understand the mechanics of this collapse. It is kinetic. It is thermodynamic. Money is a claim on energy. When you print trillions of dollars, you are printing claims on energy that does not exist. Eventually, the discrepancy must be resolved. It is usually resolved through inflation. But when inflation fails to clear the market, it is resolved through confiscation. The Venezuela intervention is a confiscation event. It is the empire seizing the collateral because the borrower can no longer pay the interest. And if they can do it to a sovereign nation, what makes you think they cannot do it to your retirement account? What makes you think they cannot do it to your bank deposit? The legal framework is already in place. The precedents are being set. The bail-in regimes are active. You are standing on the tracks, staring at the train, arguing about the color of the paint. The distraction is the narrative. The media wants you to focus on the morality of the intervention. They want you to debate the human rights record of the Maduro regime. They want you to pick a team. Do not fall for the trap. This is not a football game. This is a resource war. The reason they are taking the oil is that they are running out of the energy required to maintain the complexity of the system. Civilization is a heat engine. It requires fuel. When the fuel runs low, the engine begins to cannibalize its own parts. We are watching the cannibalization phase. The freezing of Russian assets was the appetizer. The seizure of Venezuelan oil is the main course. The dessert will be the nationalization of domestic retirement savings to fund the war machine. It is a logical progression. It is mathematical. Now, look at the shadow war occurring in the silver market. While the eyes of the world are glued to the Caribbean, the real fracture is happening in the supply chain of industrial metals. Mexico is collapsing, not politically, but geologically and structurally. The mines are dying. The grades are plummeting. The ban on open-pit mining is the nail in the coffin. You have a situation where the largest producer of silver in the world is going offline at the exact moment the industrial demand is vertical. And what does the market do? The market suppresses the price with paper contracts. This is the definition of insanity. But it is a managed insanity. They are suppressing the price to allow the insiders to exit their short positions. We have intelligence regarding massive short positions held by major bullion banks. Names like Scotia Mocatta, names like Morgan Stanley. These entities are not stupid. They are trapped. They sold silver. They do not have promising delivery. They cannot make at prices that no longer exist in reality. Now they are facing a wall. The wall is the physical shortage. You cannot print silver. You cannot quantitative ease a silver mine into existence. When the Mexican miners strike, when the Peruvian highways are blockaded by locals who are tired of being looted, the flow of metal stops. The paper contract remains, but the warehouse is empty. This is the setup for the greatest short squeeze in financial history. It will make the nickel squeeze look like a rounding error. And amidst this chaos, where is the Federal Reserve? Where is the guardian of the dollar? The chairman is under criminal investigation. The Department of Justice has breached the sanctuary. Jerome Powell is being hunted. Do not think for a second this is about a building renovation. That is the cover story. This is a political assassination. The executive branch is decapitating the central bank to seize control of the money printer. The independence of the Fed was always a myth, but now even the illusion is being shattered. When the chairman is worried about going to prison, he will print whatever the regime tells him to print. He will monetize whatever debt needs to be monetized. The pivot has happened. The Fed put is gone. It has been replaced by the Fed panic. They are losing control of the narrative. They are losing control of the shipping lanes. Look at the Red Sea. Look at Panama. The arteries of global trade are calcifying. War risk insurance premiums are skyrocketing. Shipping containers are being auctioned to the highest bidder, like artwork. The just-in-time delivery model is dead. It has been replaced by just-in-case, which means hoarding, which means inefficiency, which means Inflation that cannot be tamed by interest rates. You cannot raise interest rates to fix a hole in a ship. You cannot raise interest rates to make rainfall in the Panama Canal. The tools of the central planners are broken. They are pushing buttons that are no longer connected to the machine. The geopolitical landscape has shifted into a kinetic formation. The arrest of Maduro was the signal fire. It tells every nation in the global south that neutrality is no longer an option. You are either a vassal or a target. This will accelerate the formation of the BRICS bloc, not just as a trade union, but as a military economic alliance. They will create their own insurance mechanisms. They will create their own settlement systems. They will create their own gold-backed trade notes, and they will stop accepting the dollar. When that demand for dollars evaporates, all those trillions of exported inflation will come flooding back home to the United States. It will be a tsunami of currency destroying the domestic purchasing power. Why am I telling you this? Why do I waste my breath on the uninitiated? Because the window is closing. The drawbridge is being raised. For decades, you could drift through life assuming the system would protect you. You assumed that money in the bank was yours. You assumed that the government respected property rights. You assumed that supply chains were unbreakable. Those assumptions are now fatal errors. The world has changed. The rules have been rewritten by desperate men in windowless rooms. They have decided that to save the state, they must consume the citizen. They have decided that to save the banking system, they must sacrifice the currency. You need to understand the concept of force majeure. It is a legal clause that absolves a party from liability in the event of an unavoidable catastrophe. You are about to hear this phrase everywhere. Your bank will declare force majeure on your withdrawals. The COMEX will declare force majeure on your silver delivery. The pension fund will declare force majeure on your retirement checks. It is the polite legal way of saying, we stole it and there is nothing you can do about it. The intervention in Venezuela is a geopolitical force majeure. It is the U.S. saying, we need this oil and the laws of sovereignty no longer apply. The herd is still asleep. They are debating the news cycle. They are distracted by the circus. They do not see the iron bars slamming shut. They do not smell the smoke. But you are here. You are listening to the archive. That means you suspect the truth. The truth is that the system is insolvent. The truth is that the collateral is gone. The truth is that we are entering a period of resource feudalism, where he who holds the physical asset makes the rules, and he who holds the paper takes the knee. I am not asking you to believe me. I am asking you to look at the board. Look at the moves. Why would China lock down 65% of global silver supply? Why would central banks buy gold at all-time highs? Why would the U.S. invade a sovereign nation for oil in an era of green energy? Because the green energy narrative is a fairy tale. The reality is crude, heavy, and dirty. The reality is that without diesel, the world starves. Without silver, the missiles don't fly and the solar panels don't work. The war is for the building blocks of civilization. The protocol of resource denial is now in effect. This is not a drill. This is not a simulation. The timeline has accelerated. The kinetic event in Caracas has moved the doomsday clock forward. We are not looking at a crisis in 2030. We are looking at a crisis next Tuesday. We are looking at a cascade of failures starting in the sovereign debt markets and ending at your kitchen table. Here is the reality of the situation. The exit doors are small, the crowd is large, and the building is made of paper. When the fire starts, and it has already started, the stampede will trample anyone who is hesitating. The liquidity that you see on your screen is a phantom. It exists only as long as everyone agrees not to sell. But the selling has begun. The big players are quietly slipping out the back door, leaving the retail public to hold the bag. This brings us to the action protocol. This is not financial advice. I do not give advice to victims. I give instructions to survivors. The protocol resource denial strategy. Rule 1. Assume zero delivery. Stop looking at the spot price of silver or gold on the screen. That is a fiction. That is the price of a paper promise. If you buy a contract and you do not hold the metal in your hand, you own nothing. You own a claim against a bankrupt counterparty. When the force majeure comes, your contract will be settled in cash, at a price determined by the thieves, in a currency that is hyperinflating. Physical possession is the only title deed that physics respects. If you cannot touch it, you do not own it. Rule 2. Shorten your duration. Do not hold long-term debt. Do not hold long-term promises. The horizon of trust has collapsed. In a week, a government can fall. In a day, a currency can devalue by 20%. To hold a 30-year bond is to bet that the current world order will survive for 30 years. That is a bet against entropy. That is a bet against history. Cash out of long-duration paper, move into immediate, liquid, tangible reality. Rule 3. Watch the periphery. Do not watch the S&P 500. Watch the credit default swaps of major banks. Watch the bond yields of the G7 nations. Watch the premium on physical coins versus spot price. These are the canaries in the coal mine. When the periphery cracks, the core follows. The cracks are already visible in Japan. They are visible in the UK gilts. They are visible in the repo markets. The center cannot hold. Rule 4. Become your own central bank. The era of the lender of last resort is over. The Fed is compromised. You must become the lender of last resort for your own family. You must hold the reserve assets. You must secure the supply lines. Do not rely on the supermarket to have food. Do not rely on the grid to have power. Do not rely on the bank to have cash. Resilience is not hoarding. It is recognizing that the just-in-time delivery system has been shattered by the kinetic realities of war. Rule 5. Reject the narrative. When they tell you it is temporary, know that it is permanent. When they tell you it is for your safety, know that it is for their control. When they call it a stabilization, know that it is a collapse. The language of the state is inverted. You must learn to read the negative space. You must learn to read the silence of the Mexican mines, the silence of the Chinese exporters. That silence is the sound of the door closing. The event in Caracas was not the end. It was the starter pistol. The race has begun. It is a race between the devaluation of the currency and the revaluation of real assets. It is a race between the coercive power of the state and the survival instinct of the individual. You are in the race whether you like it or not. The only question is whether you are running towards the exit or standing still waiting for permission to leave. Do not wait for permission. Permission will not be granted. The capital controls are coming. The gold confiscation orders are drafted. The digital corrals are being built. You have a narrow window of time where the system still functions enough to allow you to exit. Use it. This is the archivist. The data is clear. The trend is irreversible. The protocol is active. Assume the crash position. Resource denial protocol engaged.